Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Akhilesh Suman and you are watching Special Report. In this episode of Special Report, we are analyzing the emerging world situation, specifically in the context of Indo-Pacific region. This is happening at a time when like-minded democracies like US, Japan and Australia are willing to join hands with India for balancing and peace and stability in the region. Indian foreign policy has been guided by moralistic values most of the times. But for last few years, we have been talking about real politics to find a rightful place among the Committee of Nations. We are trying to align with as many countries as possible and as many countries who want to align with us. Quad might be part of this alliance.
Many India watchers were surprised when India decided to join what is known as Quad, a mechanism for coordination with the US, Australia and Japan. The official spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs, Ravish Kumar, presented this initiative to the media as yet another grouping on the lines of BASICS, BRICS and RIC. India's move came after Japan's Foreign Minister Taro Kono invited the other three countries for high-level consultations.
India is open to working with like-minded countries on issues that advance our interests and promote our viewpoint. We are not rigid in this regard. Because of our broad acceptability as a country, there are a number of such initiatives which we are part of. For example, we did the trilateral meeting with Russia and China last year, and this was on the topic of Asia-Pacific. We also do an India, Sri Lanka, Maldives trilateral on security matters. We have been doing India, US, Japan for many years now, and recently we have started India, Japan, Australia. We also have India, Afghanistan, Iran, and we are looking to hold the India, US, Afghanistan meeting. All these meetings are conducted at different levels. As far as we are concerned, we have an open mind to cooperate with countries, with convergence, but obviously on an agenda which is relevant to us.
The Chinese saw the new formation as a threat to its dominance in Asia. It chose to portray Quad as a reaction to its Belt and Road Initiative. The first meeting of the Quad took place in Manila on the 12th of November 2017 on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit.
Therefore, Quad is a very important signal given to countries like China, for example. Because basically, I think the main purpose is centered around Indo-Pacific region. All these four countries are really, focused very strongly on the Indo-Pacific region. How to make this region open, transparent, and also ruled by international law. Therefore, I think there is unanimity of views among these four powers.
India, US, Australia and Japan all confirmed the meeting, though it happened at a lower official level. But the separate statements issued by the respective countries after the meeting noted that the Quad is for free and open Indo-Pacific. What was remarkable was the term Indo-Pacific that acknowledged India as a major Asian power.
I think the other thing which really helped formulate this idea was the tsunami which took place in 2004 and the very positive role Indian Navy played in the disaster relief at that time. So it was realized that India is an important partner because the other two, Japan and Australia, have been US allies even during the Cold War, and so the US has had a great working relationship with them since the end of World War II. Whereas India, having been on the wrong side of the Cold War, was noticed for the first time in 2004, and this really set some kind of a dialogue going, and the idea of a Quad started at that time.
The Quad nations' initial meeting at a lower level was out of experience. The last of such meetings between the four countries had taken place in May 2007 in Manila on the sidelines of the ASEAN Regional Forum. It had culminated in the Malabar exercises in September 2007 between these four countries and Singapore. But the initiative failed to take off after Australia withdrew, citing no reason at all. Later it became known that Australia's decision was influenced by China.
Whereas India, having been on the wrong side of the Cold War, was noticed for the first time in 2004, and this really set some kind of a dialogue going, and the idea of a Quad started at that time. And as you know, very soon Australia, their Prime Minister at that time, Kevin Rudd, who was a Mandarin scholar, succumbed to Chinese pressure, and the Quad drifted away after the first preliminary meeting, which was held in 2007.
Australia is the second largest destination of Chinese investment since 2005, the USA being the first. In a recently published white paper on foreign policy by Government of Australia, it however shows apprehension about the consequences of China's continuous growth, both militarily and economically. Navigating the decade ahead will be hard because as China's power grows, our region is changing in ways without precedent in Australia's modern history. To support a balance in the Indo-Pacific favourable to our interests and promote an open, inclusive and rules-based region, Australia will also work more closely with the region's major democracies, bilaterally and in small groupings. In addition to the United States, our relations with Japan, Indonesia, India and the Republic of Korea are central to this agenda. Thus, for obvious reasons, Australia sees India as a more reliable partner. Australia's white paper is full of praise for India's growth and demographic dividends in the aging world.
In 2007, when it was initiated, its base was very weak, and I think it was also initiated without proper preparation. And therefore, the Chinese also reacted very, very strongly. But today, 2017 is different from 2008. Today you find Australia showing a lot of interest in joining it. Australia also wants to join Malabar joint exercise. In 2007, you may recall that Australia did take part in the Malabar exercise. And after that, the Indian government stopped it, not Australia opted out. In 2007, following our quadrangular discussion in Manila, Australia had a new Prime Minister immediately after that. And the new Prime Minister was against it. Yes. And therefore, I think it happened like that. But today, I think our relations have also improved.
India is the world's fastest growing major economy and is expected to remain so for the next few years. India's growth has been supported by increased openness to foreign investment and other economic reforms, as well as by a young and growing population. Within the next 10 years, India will have the largest working age population in the world. Similarly, China is the second largest trading partner of Japan after the US. For India, China is an important trading partner, but there is hardly any dependence on trade and investment from China. India seems to be measuring the commitment of the other three before engaging in summit-level interactions.
If you look at the trade figures and the economic interlinkages between the Quad countries and independently their relations with China, China is, in all cases, the top three, comes in the top three of each country as far as trade relations are concerned. Yeah. And India is no exception to that. Yeah. I think what we need to do, and the biggest concern is from the United States, because the United States on the one hand talks in terms of, the strategic threat from China, and economically, I think its economy is the most interlinked with the Chinese economy. Yeah. So there is a bit of a dichotomy over there, and this is something which is, and it's a similar case with Australia.
India is the only Asian country that chose to stay away from China's ambitious One Belt, One Road initiative. All other countries of the world sent their representatives even when many of them had apprehensions. Australia, Japan, US and all major powers were present at the BRI summit that took place in Beijing on 14th and 15th May 2017. Chinese President Xi Jinping had proudly proclaimed the summit as a great success, with 68 countries signing the Belt and Road Agreement with China. So far, 68 countries and international organizations have signed Belt and Road Agreements with China. We had an in-depth exchange of views on policy synergies for closer partnership, connectivity, cooperation, and people-to-people exchanges. We have reached a broad consensus and adopted joint communique. India's position was that it is encroaching sovereignty of India by passing China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Indian policy circles felt road making is a routine exercise that takes place on a regular basis. So BRI was viewed as a design to influence economically weak countries with money power. Japan, Australia and the US too shared this skepticism.
How this is going to help Japan or Australia in particular?
The stakeholders in this region are Japan, Australia, India, US. These are the four members of the Quad which has started. Actually, if you really see, this has been revived. It was good about 10 years back when initiative had been taken to have this kind of a dialogue. But then in between, for some reason, it was put on the back burner, and there is a requirement now to restart it to ensure this kind of a freedom of navigation.
Japan never stood up to China. On the contrary, it invested heavily in China without considering its economic and political ramifications. Now Japan is facing a hegemonistic China looking to humble it, citing war crimes it perpetrated during the colonial period. China's growth as a competing economic power may have forced Japan to look towards India.
You see the evolution of India-Japan partnership in the last about at least 4 to 5 years, ever since Prime Minister Modi became the head of the state here. And our partnership has really made rapid progress. It has now developed into a very vibrant global partnership, and also we have really diversified our interests now. Earlier it was focused only on economic matters, but today I think it has become more and more strategic in nature. And we cover areas like maritime security and things of that kind. Therefore, I would say that this partnership is very vibrant and it is going to expand further.
Actually, the proposal for Quad followed India's stand on BRI. To add to it, Doklam incident also reinforced India's moral standing against unilateral inching inside territories by China for long. The two incidents followed American President Donald Trump's announcement of new South Asia policies and sort of renaming of Asia-Pacific into Indo-Pacific. India virtually figured in the center of both the concepts. This is indeed recognition of India that is claiming for permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council.
Always tell the United States that we also have concerns with China on our land borders. Until the US does not takes certain steps to address our concerns on the land borders. So I think India would have to do a lot of strategic balancing between its own core interests vis-a-vis China and its larger interests in the Indo-Pacific. India does have very large interests in the Pacific because it also builds into the Indian Ocean, where China has been very aggressive in the past, in the Bay of Bengal, where China, China has been trying to construct develop ports to surround India. So I think in the maritime domain, India has already felt very comfortable aligning or working together with the United States and Japan. And Australia, we've done bilateral exercises. This is the first time we did bilateral exercises with China. So I think it's just a natural progression of one trilateral mechanism and one bilateral that you do a quadrilateral mechanism by way of maritime exercises.
Great honor to be with you, Mr. President.
The Quad concept has come at a time when the US is looking inwards and asking its allies to share the burden of securing the world. US President Donald Trump's Asia policy is influenced by the work of Indian expats who are seen as hardworking, disciplined and trustworthy in that country. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's resolute stand on foreign policy has also won hearts and minds of major powers.
Individually, we have very good relations both with the United States and with Japan, and Australia has also lifted its embargo on supplying uranium for peaceful uses. So individually, we have very strong, robust relations with each of the countries.
In Asia, Japan has always been a reluctant player in global politics. For it, economy was much more important than its standing in the world. That was why Japan always chose to invest in China for economic benefits. Most of the technologies have been duplicated by the Chinese to produce cheaper items to outcompete Japanese originals.
It would make China a little wary. I mean, it's not a China containment, because if you think that you can come out with a China containment strategy, that is not going to work. It has to have, it has to be something which is an alternative mechanism, and China becomes wary that it cannot act in an arbitrary manner. So if the Quad can achieve that much, I think it would be successful.
Australia also had to put commercial interests above the need to have some kind of unity with Asian democracies. It always wanted to be seen in the right side of the US and set its agenda along with the US. It never wanted to go deep into the intricacies of India's worldviews, but it started realizing the growing importance of India only by 2015. India's strong stance on the Belt and Road Initiative and the Doklam standoff showed that the South Asian nation had the capacity to stand up to the Chinese.
You see, the point is that ever since China overruled the mandate or the decision of the United Nations laws of the seas and moved into South China Sea, the countries of the region are very fearful of the fact that now they may interfere with the movement of other ships and aircrafts in these international waters. So to make sure that the freedom of navigation and freedom of movement remains to be a prerogative as per the international laws, and all the nations exercise this freedom in this area.
In Russia-India-China trilateral meeting held in New Delhi in December 2017, China felt the impression, and it also raised issues with foreign policy mandarins in New Delhi. But India has to follow a trajectory, and Quad is part of the trajectory.
China, though, was taken aback by the Quad, tried to downplay its concerns by saying it was not against China. It also suggested that it should not be against China, while Chinese think tanks realized that the rapid rise of India's economy and regional influence are reasons why the US, Japan and Australia wanted to ally with India.
At times we do hear comments that China is very apprehensive that this may be used against a particular country. They should not be, because basically it is their action which has revived this Quad and cooperation between these four nations.
India's articulation of its Act East policies became major game changer in Asia. Its consistent stance on South China Sea and acceptance of international tribunals ruling in favor of Bangladesh brought international recognition for India as a responsible power. India's location between the prosperous Asia and the distributed Asia makes it an important player wielding strategic power to balance politics of Indian Ocean region.
Spokesperson, when questioned about the Quad, he said that we are only looking at strengthening our Act East mechanism. So I think for India, Act East is one of its very strong and proclaimed foreign policy initiatives. So a Quad only builds into strengthening what India has already articulated.
India's resolute stand on SAARC added to its credibility in global war against terror. Pakistan has been using this forum to foment ill will against India and kept trying its card to encourage militants in Jammu and Kashmir. By isolating Pakistan on the issue of terrorism, India virtually became a champion of war on terror. This is another factor that drew the US, Australia and Japan towards a South Asian power. Now BIMSTEC is working for better because of non-presence of Pakistan in this grouping.
US has talked in terms of establishing an Indo-Pacific transport corridor which stretches from Central Asia and goes up to the Indo-Pacific. Now, can these four countries collectively, because a part of this corridor builds into the India, into India's Bangladesh, Myanmar, the BIMSTEC corridor, which we keep talking about, going up to Thailand. Now, can this corridor become an alternative, or become an important mechanism, an economic mechanism linking Central Asia to Australia? Now, that is one way of looking at the Quad, if the Quad can facilitate such a mechanism.
In the meantime, China closely identified itself to the cause of Pakistan, drawing global ire. It openly supported Pakistan in the UN and other international fora, saving Jaish-e-Mohammed chief being branded as a terrorist. China also kept opposing Indian membership in the nuclear suppliers group. In this situation, there was no harm to India if more allies in the Asia-Pacific region want to cozy up for one-upsmanship of a single nation.
It can be some kind of a mutual defense cooperation, which is not exactly the military alliance, because once you go in for a military alliance, then that may be directed against some forces operating in the area. But if it is a defense cooperation, it could be for the purposes of mutual defense against any kind of, you can say that, assertion by a single power in this region.
Russia was giving ambivalent signals about Pakistan. China had already become its closest ally. India joined SCO, BRICS and RIC. All have China and Russia as members. But these organizations are yet to come up with a resolute stand on terrorism and development issues. However, India is keeping itself engaged, hoping for positive outcomes.
We are speaking with China. We are trying to diffuse the border problem. We are a part of the SCO, which has been facilitated by China. We are a part of the RCEP. We are also one of the founding members of the AIIB. So we are also in the China groupings, and we do this. So we are kind of trying to balance our interests in a position, with the aim of seeing what is best for us.
The BRICS summit held in Xi'an after resolution of Doklam standoff saw India asserting itself. It forced China to include its concerns over Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed in the summit declaration. The declaration also reflected India's long-standing concerns over terror attacks across the world. We expressed concern on the security situation in the region and violence caused by the Taliban, ISIL, Daesh, Al-Qaeda and its affiliates including Eastern Turkestan Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, the Haqqani Network, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, TTP and Hizb-ut-Tahrir. But China went back on its Xiamen commitments by blocking the UN Security Council to name Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar a global terrorist. This was 2 months after the BRICS summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself was present at the summit in which both the countries shared concerns over terror. This was a disappointment to India and the message came home that China adheres to no commitment. India condemned Chinese stand in the UN.
If there is more disunity and all, China becomes emboldened. We've seen that even in the case of India, when our relations with the United States are good, China is quiet. When they feel that the United States and India, there's tension in relationships, you find that China is very aggressive. So China has this slight bullying mentality. And if they realize that there are these 4 democracies which will come together in the face of any aggression or in the face of any threat to their core maritime interests, so China would be wary of.
After experimenting with BIMSTEC in the face of near failure of SAARC, India is looking all over for a constructive grouping. Quad might be one because of democracy and development friendliness. Most world nations feel threatened by China's territorial ambitions too. India hopes that Japan, US and Australia will be willing to de-link economics and politics in their ties with China.
I think we talk always about a strategic autonomy, and India is not going to compromise on that. I think we've emerged as a very mature nation. We've had our trials and problems in the past. We still do have a lot of problems. But to remain in isolation also in a globalized world is not feasible or not advisable. So I think the Quad is a good mechanism, it is a good move, but India needs to, as I had started in the beginning, that we need to see what is in our core interest. It is definitely in our interest to be a part of this grouping of democracies.
This is the reason why Japan showed interest in Quad despite US withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Japan has already activated its initiatives for infrastructure projects in Southeast Asia. Japan also has launched the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor program along with India.
So a new partnership is in building. Indeed, it is under evolutionary transition, but it has the potentiality. India hopes that such type of grouping will increase multipolarity in Asia and will also increase economic cooperation. That's all in this episode of a special report. Thank you for watching.